You have somehow ended up listening to The Stuff That's Real That You Didn't Know Was Real, but also is cool podcast. Or Sturty Dickwur Bayik. Or, never mind.
All right, folks. Well, that's a wrap of the intro anyway. Tricked you. You thought you could get out of here with just listening to 10 seconds of intro.
This is the easiest show I've done so far.
But you are mistaken, because we are just getting started. Thanks for listening. We are coming back at you again with some things that are real. Some stuff, you might say, that's real. Some stuff that you might say that's cool as well. That you may not know. May not know that you might not know is real or cool.
You did not know that was real.
But you are about to know that they are these are stuffs that are real and cool that either exist in our world or theoretically exist in our universe or have existed in our past. Those are the types of things we cover here on Stuff That's Real, and it's all for one purpose: to make you less dumb.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. This is the kind of stuff that we research every day. This is the kind of stuff that we dig through. Kevin, our other host here, and I are authors, and we love this stuff. We love doing this kind of research because it is fodder for our fiction, as we say.
Fiction.
How
fodder.
are you today? Fiction fodder.
How are you doing today? I'm good,
Kevin?
man. I wonder if anybody can pick up on the fact that both of us are like dragging our butts right now. Like
nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nope. You weren't supposed to out us. Now they're going to be able
more
to hear
caffeine as we speak. So.
No one can hear the lethargy in my voice.
I am good, man. I am. There's a whole lot going on. You and I both are in this like stage of multi moves.
Yes.
Multi relocations, which isn't so unusual for me with the whole van life thing, but there's been stuff stacked on top of that lately, so it's a lot of work.
You need to change your hashtag to house life.
Hashtag. We don't have the house yet. So.
In-laws house life.
Yeah, in-laws house life for the next like 5 days, and then back to hashtag van life. Yeah,
I'm kicking you out again.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think we've got some things here to jump into, but do you want to lead us off today?
Oh, sure.
Something really cool.
I have a story that is not out of this world, but is in fact in this world.
Ooh, okay. I'm intrigued.
You've heard this. This was all published very recently, like back in mid-April. And that is that the Pentagon has confirmed UFOs, pyramid-shaped UFOs that appeared flying near naval vessels in 2019. Do you know this whole story?
Not the whole story. I did hear this. This was sort of like in the middle of the COVID is going to take over the world and kill us all news. Mm-hmm. And so this was just sort of shoved in at the end of one of these. They were like, oh, but by the way, before we go here, there are UFOs and it's been confirmed by the Pentagon. All right, see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was kind of how it was presented.
While everybody's distracted by this whole virus thing, there's alien life among us. So the whole incident took place in July 2019. And there are several videos. I don't know, is that coming from my side, that noise?
It's definitely coming from your side. Somebody's drilling a hole into your bunker. And
so they're replacing the air conditioner in this house. And I snuck off into this room so that there wouldn't be random noises, and looks like I get some anyway. But anyway,
sounds like they waited until that you got to where you were going to be before they decided where they were going to put the new air conditioner.
Not a peep out of these guys. The whole time I've been in here, by the way, not a single sound. Maybe that's the UFOs. So the first video that surfaced and that was confirmed by the Pentagon, it showed a pyramid-shaped craft reportedly hovering 700 feet over the tail of the Russell, which is the USS Russell, which is the naval vessel. So, and they track this thing like they have, about a little less than 20 seconds worth of video of it, but it's not the only one. And what we're being told is there's more to come. So there are more videos that are about to be released, and the Pentagon is going to release this entire archive of confirmed UFO sightings. Now, what's interesting about this is just because it's a UFO does not intrinsically mean that it's alien life. That's the first place we're all going to rush to. But
we know it's aliens. We know
it's aliens. But
we all just know.
the interesting thing, like a lot of stuff has come up because of this story, right? So number one is, so the big claim really is that regardless of whether it's aliens or not, the whole thing represents a failure of our intelligence network. And because if it does happen to be Earth-based technology, there's quite a bit happening here. One, these things move and function in a way that we didn't think was possible for technology within our atmosphere. So, they sudden stops, midair hovering, sudden acceleration, sudden deceleration. All things that there are a lot of these things that should be impossible according to the laws of physics as we know them. So either this is an alien technology, meaning it could be, beings from another planet or beings from another reality, even a side real universe of some kind, or a different dimension, I guess you could say. Although that's misleading. Dimension is not a good. That's not a good synonym for alternate reality, by the way. But it could be that, or if it is Earth-based technology, what it means is we failed to keep track of somebody out there. So the Russians or the Chinese or somebody snuck one under the radar, literally, and has technology that we cannot currently match. So that's problematic all around. So there's this footage, by the way, it's been analyzed by like filmmakers and special effects artists just to see if they could determine whether it was faked. But it has been confirmed by the Pentagon itself and their experts. So it's just just amazing how this is just like one more thing to come out of 2020 is the existence of UFOs.
Yeah, and I think that the usual typical MO or attack of at least the U.S. government is the one I'm most intimately familiar with, has been to just violently deny anything that might be seen as different or strange or confusing or scary or interesting, in this case. And so I think that's what's most surprising to me about this story is not that, hey, there's stuff in the sky we don't recognize, but that's kind of the story of UFOs from the beginning. And a lot of times, yeah, sure, they're debunked or this or that, or we just assume there's some sort of government thing, and that's usually what they'll say. Don't worry, we were doing testing over there. That's just don't worry about what that is. Everybody look away.
It was a weather balloon.
Yeah, or just basically faintly denying, or I should say, basically barely admitting that that's exactly what it is. It's defense stuff or government stuff. And in this case, they're just like, no. It's unidentified
object. Well, and knowing, by the way, full well what the public will make of that, right? So here's what I know. And this is, as thriller authors, here's what we know. When the government tells you something, you can almost always bet there's something else going on. So the fact that the government's willing to release this implies that there's a story that they probably know full well that underlies all of this.
And I think not just a story, but a story that's probably better and almost more impossible to believe than the one that they're telling us. Because UFOs is pretty incredible, but the fact that they've always taken the stance of, well, it's not what you think it is, which is aliens or just something we don't know about. We know about it and it's fine. Nothing to see here. It's boring, and so the fact that they're coming out saying, hey, this is something we don't know, means they really, really don't want us to know what it is.
Right. So it's all about stripes and zebras, right? The stripes confuse the lion. We don't know how many zebras there actually are. So we're not seeing the actual full story. We're being mesmerized by the admission. So what's interesting though is over the decades, I mean, we've had astronauts in actual bona fide NASA astronauts who have given testimony that they've seen UFOs while in orbit, that they've seen strange things. We've had over the past century military aircraft that's, had things like a UFO formation comes and flies alongside them briefly, and then just changes direction in an instant and disappears. But consider what that means, though. Like if you've got a craft that can be in our atmosphere, that can just in an instant change direction with no stop. Just it's moving at 150 miles per hour north, and then in the next instant, it's moving at the same exact speed south. Right?
I think it means that whatever human or biological creature inside must have some pretty good brain box protection, because that kind of a momentum shift and acceleration deceleration is
unless
known to have some concussive effects on people.
Right. Unless they don't something about the craft itself prevents that. Like if they've got some sort of full control over gravity, as an example, like they have mastered gravity, the force of gravity, and they within that spacecraft, there's no inertia, no momentum. As far as they're concerned, are sitting still in a room, and the spacecraft itself can move in any direction at any time at any speed, and they never feel the effects of it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could see that being. There's 1,000 possibilities, and of course now I'm immediately jump into how do I make this into a fiction book, and it's what's really cool about this kind of stuff, and this is why I write the genre that we write. But for me, it's not explaining all this away as saying, well, it's aliens and they've got magic. It's being able to figure out how this works using science and technology, either classical physics or theoretical physics that we do know now and understand.
Right.
So trying to figure out the answer to that inertia problem, trying to figure out the answer to the gravity problem without it being something just, it's a little tiny black hole inside, because that doesn't make sense, right? That there's just some things that are too far out of the realm of possibility in today's world. Not that that can't exist in sci-fi. It certainly can and does, but I love taking it and trying to somehow make it make sense. Like, for example, saying, well, it's not actually going, a hard 90-degree angle. It's actually, the trick of the light and maybe what is it, the Borealis effect in the atmosphere. I don't know if that's the right term, whatever. Coriolis effect, I think is what I'm trying to go for. Something like that, but just the way the light bends and it makes it look like it's moving and stopping and going a different direction. But stuff like that I could say, in a book, like, oh, okay, that makes more sense using technology we have now, military or otherwise. It's still a cool UFO, but there's still humans inside, and then no, they're not stopping immediately and turning sideways. It's tricks that they're playing, and they've studied how to make it look real. And anyway, I just think that's nifty.
A tenet of science is that, a tenet of strategy really is that if you want to, the best method for avoiding a problem is to not be there, right? So it's entirely possible that what we're interacting with is some sort of remote craft that doesn't have to worry about inertia, because there's nothing inside of it, no one inside of it to be shaken up like a yolk inside an egg. I mean, there could be just nothing in there.
What about some kind of advanced hologram technology? That there's nothing at all there.
Now you've dipped into a realm, and I literally was about to bring this up, but there is an idea floating around out there. Elon Musk actually is a subscriber to this idea, along with a lot of the engineering and science community, that what we are actually living in is a computer simulation, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, like, in that scenario, there could be glitches and God modes and, things like that. I mean, what if all we're seeing is a cursor, God's cursor, following aircraft or something. But the idea that we could be living in a simulation means that the laws of physics as we know them are simply coded in. Right. And, someone clever enough or someone with high enough authority and access could circumvent those rules. So if you think about it in terms of, like, if I'm playing a video game like World of Warcraft or something, one of these big immersive, worlds, there's a system of rules that apply to the creatures, the characters living in that world. But if I am but I, as a creator or programmer of that, I'm not subject to those rules.
Right.
I might interact under those rules if I were to visit that world as an avatar, but I don't have to pay attention to those rules. I can change the rules so that I can teleport anywhere at a whim, or fly in any direction I want, or whatever. So
now you get into the plot of Ready Player One, or even more accurate, Wreck-It Ralph 1 and 2,
which I have not seen. Wreck-It Ralph.
It's good. I mean, it's the same concept, right? It all takes place in a video, not all, but it takes place in a video game. And one of the video games, there's like essentially an AI, and he figures out how to code himself out of the game and into another game so he could be victorious all the time. And it's sort of the same idea, right? He's just building. He's able to. He found the Easter egg that lets him, have kind of super user access to the game.
Yeah.
So that's
that keeps coming up. That idea. So I have this theory, by the way, that fiction reflects some sort of undercurrent of like general universal knowledge, right? So there's that idea of zeitgeist, where suddenly, half a dozen people invent the telephone, for example, or half a dozen people invent a method of, storing and transferring electricity long range. All these, a lot of our throughout time, there's been circumstance after circumstance of certain technologies emerging in disparate environments. So that's why you'll have situations where there's a question about who actually invented, for example, television.
Yeah.
We think we know who invented it, but it turns out that at the exact moment, completely separate from each other with no crosstalk or communication, 3 different people filed patents within a week of each other in different parts of the world. And so I think I feel like certain concepts that come up suddenly become the zeitgeist of the moment in like fiction. I think it's a hint that there's some undercurrent of knowledge that we've gained access to, maybe not consciously, but suddenly we have this idea. And this idea of living in a simulation has suddenly become popular in fiction. Like you're seeing film and TV and, lit RPG novels and things like that. All this stuff is cropping up all of a sudden. And so I think there's something there. So tying that back into the UFO sighting and confirmation, that's one possible explanation. We kind of went a little off the rails there, but
that's the point, is that's all related, and there's something happening. There's some kind of undercurrent here, and something we don't understand and don't quite can't fully grasp, either because we don't have all the we don't have all the facts, but mostly because we don't quite understand the rules yet. Right. And that's what we get into the theoretical physics. And here's another example of how we don't quite understand the rules. If you want to segue a little bit, I'll try to get this segued as cleanly and smoothly as possible, so you won't even know that I'm segueing until I drop the bomb that is to come. But I'm going to read the top of this article from the Smithsonian Magazine. In the lowland tropics of northern Colombia, 60 miles from the Caribbean coast, Cerrejón is an empty, forbidding, seemingly endless horizon of dusty outback, stripped of vegetation and crisscrossed with dirt roads that lead to enormous pits 15 miles in circumference. It's one of the world's largest coal operations, covering an area larger than Washington, D.C. and employing some 10,000 workers. Do you know what they found in one of these mines, Mr. Tomlinson?
In a coal mine?
In a coal mine, deep in the heart of Colombia.
Deep in the heart of Colombia? I'm gonna say a meteorite made mostly of gold.
Close. In that you're not really close at all, but that's okay. They actually, these are some really important fossil deposits down here.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of a snapshot to a previous world, right? So in this particular instance, one of the deeper parts of these mines, it's sort of like a vision of the past right when the dinosaurs had just disappeared. So Cederholm is probably this is a quote, probably the best and probably the only window on a complete ancient tropical ecosystem anywhere in the world, which already is really cool, right? So they basically popped open this mine and they're digging down, and they all of a sudden stumbled onto, fossilized plants, animals, the entire troposphere. The ecosystem is just everything. It's all there. And one of the things they found, this is 58 million years ago, right? So right after the dinosaurs, if we think the dinosaurs are done, 65 million, this is only just a few million years. It's like a snapping of a finger. So this is exactly what you might think of a swampy jungle. This is very similar to what we currently have in the Amazon basin, temperature-wise, and the kind of overall humidity feel of it. Huge trees, giant rivers, all that kind of stuff. And we found this all kind of preserved underneath the surface of the earth in this mine. And one of the things that they discovered, which isn't terribly surprising, is that there are very large animals back then. They found, for example, turtles with shells twice the size of manhole covers, so probably roughly twice the size of the Galapagos tortoise, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Huge crocodiles, three different species, each more than a dozen feet long. 7-foot long lungfish, and I'm not sure what a normal lungfish is, probably maybe the size of a human lung. I don't know. But these were 7 feet long.
Yeah.
And so, here's the deal, though. The biggest one they found, or the most surprising one they found, is called the Titanoboa. Titanoboa. And Titanoboa. And if you want to imagine what this thing looks like, imagine a snake that's 40 feet long and weighs more than a ton.
Wow.
It's a serpent that would look similar to a modern day boa constrictor, but probably behaved, we assume, more like today's anaconda. And the reason for that, I've actually, when I wrote the Amazon code, I wanted to feature a big old lady anaconda in the book as sort of the glory of the Amazon rainforest. And don't watch the movie Anaconda, because that's not accurate of how these creatures live and operate and hunt. Yes, they'll grab a small child and all that off the shores sometimes, but typically they're not that big. But the Titanoboa, we would be seen as probably like bite-sized snacks for this thing. It was the largest snake ever found. And here's the important part. Here's why I think it's really cool. The fact of its mere existence has big implications for how we understand the history of life on Earth.
Yeah.
And where we're going. They even say, like, we can kind of predict the future in some ways by understanding, some of these creatures in the past. So anyway, this is from the Smithsonian. This is a legit thing. They've commissioned a sculptor. This sounds like the coolest job in the world. This guy named Kevin Hockley. They said, "Hey, would you create a giant full-size replica of the Titanoboa for us?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll make a snake and make some money doing it." But this thing is absolutely massive. I need to send you the picture of this. This is the replica of what they found, essentially. And of course, they've got it all coiled up, so it's so it looks even more terrifying than it normally should. But I just can't imagine. You're walking around the jungle, and obviously you would hear it coming because it's crushing trees and stuff, I guess. But
I'm looking at the article now.
Massive.
It's terrifying. This thing is terrifying.
That's pretty much all we need to say about it, right? Just this.
It really is. I have a thing about snakes anyway. A sort of weird like fascination / horror comes over me when I see snakes, and that's a visceral reaction. That's programmed into our DNA, by the way. Opens. Okay, it turns out. So from the lens of the archaeological thriller writer, throughout history, in just about every culture, every major culture for sure, there are certain symbolic things that just come up over and over again. Okay, the Great Flood is in every single culture, even disparate cultures that have nothing at all to do with each other. There's the symbology of a tree in practically every culture has some sort of significance. The dying and rising god has been a repeating theme. But the snake, the serpent, is another one that shows up in practically every mythology, every faith that has ever existed on Earth. And it's always something that's tied to the creation of man and man's fall from grace, or man's exile from paradise, or exile from one of the other 9 realms, or something like that. There's always that story in every culture, and there are great hints that what we think of as being the upper limit of the age of man on Earth is may not be anywhere close to how far back our history goes. So knowing that there's something like this giant 40-foot boa buried under, several, like a billion plus years of regolith and other material means, to me, says that there may be something underlying all those mythologies. I mean, because if you think about it, as an early human, if you encountered this giant effing snake that could swallow you in a bite, that's gonna inform some mythology, my friend. That's gonna stick around for a few thousand years of
You're going to talk about that around the campfire.
Yeah.
Remember when Uncle Dan wandered into the woods and a giant maw appeared that he thought was a cave?
So anybody remember Uncle Dan? I remember there used to be an Uncle Dan here, and now there's just this really full snake.
Dan? We don't talk of Uncle Dan. But here's this tooth that's the size of a human body.
So
yeah, man. I mean, I think there's something to be said about. We got to it pretty early, in the Bible here in Christianity world, where God was like, "Hey, cool. So we've got these 2 people, and here's how you guys were." Oh, hey, before we do anything else, guys, let's talk about snakes.
Yeah,
like before we get to the good stuff down the road, and this does get better, but let's just throw snakes under the bus here, really quick.
Man's origin and surviving great floods and all that. But cautionary tale: there's this giant snake. Now in the Bible story, the snake began with there was an implication, at least, that that snakes originally had legs, and that as part of their curse for tempting humanity, that those legs were removed and they were forced to have to crawl on their bellies and that sort of thing. That there's all kinds of implications in that as well. If you sort of start now thinking in terms of early reptiles, we have lots of reptiles that are very snake-like that have legs. So in terms of like an evolution, there could be something to that. So this kind of thing is always fascinating. This opens up so many doors, and we could go on for a very long time talking about the implications of this stuff.
The reason it was on my mind is I'm gonna throw I don't would say friend, I don't really know him in person, but mutual acquaintance Greg Beck, or Greg Beck. He's a pretty well-known thriller author. Does some creature feature stuff. And one of the books or the series that he's written that I have read, highly recommended, super good, it's fantastic. It's called Primordia, In Search of the Lost World. And just to give you kind of a brief overview, real quick, this is essentially the main character, Ben Cartwright. He was a soldier, but then he stumbles upon some letters from Arthur Conan Doyle and his great grandfather, who vanished while exploring the Amazon. So the letters from Arthur Conan Doyle, I believe, I was doing some research, I think those are real. And then he fictionalized the person he was writing them to and made Ben Cartwright the modern day descendant. And so anyway, Ben finds these letters and he says, what, my dad just died. I'm here to mourn the loss and I kind of need some alone time. I'm going to go and follow what these letters say. And so he creates this amazing, cool tale where there's, I believe it's a comet that comes over every 10 years on the dot. And there's a, I forget what they're called. It's essentially a raised plateau, like a mesa type thing in the rainforest down in I think it's in the Amazon, and it's super, super tall. And so it's close enough to where this comet passes over that it creates some kind of weird time shift wormhole sort of situation where if you're there for 24 hours, or if you're there during this 24-hour period, you will be sent back into the primordial time, like back when the Titanoboa existed, just in this little plateau. And so, and then if you don't get off of the mesa by the time the comet passes, the next 24-hour period, then you're stuck there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so obviously he gets stuck there for 10 years, right? And so I may have just given away the ending.
You just spoiled the whole thing.
It just spoiled the whole thing. It's still really good though, because it's not about that as much as it's about, just the creature feature, staying alive and in the presence of this gigantic, ridiculous snake that we now know actually existed. We've got the skeleton to prove it. Anyway, so I just kind of a shout out there. If you want to check that out, I'll drop it in the show notes. Fantastic book, really well done, and it's actually a series. So I may have ruined the ending of the first one, but there's 2 more to go, and they're all great.
So that can be the next week, and when we write that in, the next great find would be the Ridiculoso boa.
Ooh, it'd be even bigger. It used to swallow Titanoboa's whole.
Exactly, like that.
Hang out with the megalodon.
Is just like it's freshly hatched spawn.
Yes,
but and the way they
turns
find
out the Titanoboa wasn't even fully grown. It was just a baby.
That was just a baby, one of many. Ridiculoboa.
Ridiculoboa. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, yes, that is a good story. That's one's going to stick with me in the evenings, late into the evenings. As I was walking across the lawn, I help out my father-in-law while I'm here, and he had been pressure washing, and so I take the dog out, and I'm walking across the grass, and suddenly there is this enormous snake.
Oh, geez!
And I jump, and I kind of yank her leash and get her back, and then of course it turned out to be the garden hose.
Wasn't a Titanoboa or
it's not a Titanoboa or a Ridiculoboa. But
there's still time to find those though.
Very close though.
In the real,
there is an alligator in the community pond over where we're we're staying. I was going to say a very large one. It's like 5 foot long, but
it's nothing.
That's nothing, but.
The Titanogator eats those for breakfast.
That is not a record-setting alligator by any stretch, especially in this part of the world. But it is in a community.
5 more feet of alligator than I want to see.
Yeah, that's more alligator than you want near like your dogs and cats and small children. So,
yes. Yeah. Especially with the aptly named Minnie being your dog,
who would be a mere morsel
bites
for this thing. Like she wouldn't even slow him down long enough for me to escape.
No. He'd be like, "I'm going to swallow this while I bite your leg." Indeed.
That's very cool. Well, so before we wrap up, I know we're going to wrap up, but the thing about that story that I like a lot is not just the creepy snake thing that's going to haunt my nightmares for the next several weeks, but that I love that we were able to bring that back around to the sort of common mythology thing,
Yes.
There's so much of that out there. One day we should just do like a show. I'd love to hear if people like this idea, but the whole comparative mythology thing, that's something very fascinating to me. I think we could probably do several episodes on that idea alone. Just find modern stories that can hint at comparative mythology. I'm obsessed with it. That's practically every book I write eventually brings comparative mythology into the mix. So
we shall. I mean, there's something to it, man, and I think that's what it is. Really cool to me. It is really cool to kind of explore some of these things that we think we got it all figured out. I mean, that's really what it is, right? Humanity is always constantly. We got it. We figured this out. We know it. And then something like this happens. You find a UFO or a
pyramid
Titanoboa,
UFOs.
And you're like, holy crap! This is
like, we did not expect this. We know nothing.
Ain't that the truth? Well, we hope that you know something that you didn't know about 30 minutes prior, and we hope that your nightmares, that your dreams are terrorized by Titanoboas and UFOs, as ours will be this evening, so we can all suffer in kind. But this has been another episode of Stuff That's Real, that you didn't know was real, but also is cool. And we are your gracious and loving hosts, of course. If you do want to reach out to us, as Kevin mentioned, you can do that by visiting the website stuffthat'sreal.com, or sending us an email directly at hello@stuffthat'sreal.com. I just tested the email address. It does not bounce back, although I do not know where it goes. So that is your warning. Send us an email at your peril, and we may or may not ever see it.
A giant snake in a UFO will answer at its leisure.
At its leisure. Well, we
All
hope
right.
you've enjoyed this, and we will be here next week, right on schedule for you. Talk to you soon, and take care.
Take care, buddy.
Stuff that's real.